I'm Emerine Noble. I was born on 7th Street in 1929. The house I was born in is still standing. In growing up, it was so much different. Us kids didn't have to worry about anything really, and because you knew that the neighbors were going to tell your folks if you did anything bad. When I was real little, I had a good friend that lived right up on the hill from 7th Street, and I'd go up there, and then we'd go up on what is now the Heights, and we'd get to play. We'd go among the sagebrush and the junipers, and well, there were no junipers up there. And it was a whole different lifestyle. We had, if you won games, you made your games. You played Annie Annie over, and I can't remember what all, but there was no video. We had no phones or anything. Then my folks moved. They bought a house on 3rd Street when I was about, well, I'm going to back up. When I was about 4 or 5 or 6, we lived on 1st Street, right across from what turned into be the second hospital in Prineville on 1st Street. And Onita McKinnon and I used to sneak into the old house and go up the attic, because the people who moved in out had left all these toys and dolls and everything, and we'd sneak up there and play with them. And then when I was about 8, my folks bought a place on 3rd Street, and I lived there until the time I was married. Of course, 3rd Street wasn't the main street then. It was 2nd Street was the main street. But on 2nd Street, right across from where my husband was raised, there was a farm, and Otto Spillman ran it. It was called the Johnson Farm. And at evening, I'd go over there and take my cup, because he'd be milking, and he'd milk my cup full of milk, and I'd get to have fresh milk. Just the little things that you remember when you were a kid. Then on weekends, after school, us kids, there'd be 4 or 5 of us girls, would hike up Viewpoint. Of course, it wasn't Viewpoint then, it was just a place. And we'd always take marshmallows and have marshmallows. Then we'd swim in Crooked River. Back at the old Johnson place, there was a swimming hole, and that's where we'd spend our summer days. And we did that up until when I was in high school. It was Stearns's Dam up Crooked River that us kids would hike up to, and that's where we'd swim. Then when we always worked, us kids, from the time we were about 12 years old. We babysit. And then after must have been about 14, 15, my aunt would run the hospital, the new hospital that was started on 1st Street. And of course it was during the war. There were no nurses, and I went to work there, from everything from bedpans on up. And then after I had worked there for a while, I gave shots, I gave medicine, all the things that you can't believe that a 15-year-old kid would do. Then when I was my senior year in high school, I went to school a half a day, and I worked for Dr. Sherwin in his office. And he taught me to do x-rays and, of course, give shots. all the things that nobody would be able to do unless they were licensed now. In our high school, it was in the wintertime, us kids would, of course, we had dances every Friday night, and we'd take our ice skates, and after the dance at 11 o'clock, we'd go up and what we called the cut, and would ice skate until, build a big fire, and the Grimes family, the first that I know that they come here would be in the late 1890s, and they settled out here on what is called Grimes Flat. It was the three boys. Of course, they didn't own the whole flat. They just had land out here. Grandpa was up on, I don't remember what road Grandpa was, but he had a ranch, and then Uncle Dave had a ranch on Grimes Road, and I'm not sure where Uncle John was.
Your grandpa and grandma's name, or your mom and dad's name?
What?
Your mom and dad's name?
Well, my grandpa was John Grimes, and Naomi was his wife, and they had two kids. They had Uncle Irvin, who was a judge up here for 12 years, and then Mom was Ethel Grimes, and she married my dad, who was Carlin, and he was born in 1900 at out of Sisters, and he was raised at Brothers, and then he was cowboy. He went. Well, he left home when he was about 15 and worked out for, he was a twin, and his older brother, Henry, he worked for Bill Brown. And Dad always said that he worked for Bill Brown, but it wasn't ever in the records. But he was cowboy, and he rounded up wild horses for the Army. I was in the 5th grade. Our grade school burned. And I wasn't a very good student, so they put me back a year. Of course, I thought the world had come to an end. And the best thing they ever did for me. But us kids, the school teachers were, they were awesome. They really made you feel like you were learning something. The principal was Mr. Nolan, and he scared you to death because he was so big. You minded because you didn't want to have to go down to the office. Then when we in high school, we had all the activities that everybody went to the ball games, everybody went to, they participated in everything. And when we were, I can't remember when we started the paper drives. I think I was a sophomore, and we gathered papers, and we filled the boxcar full of old papers, because they were recycling them, and we got paid for it, and that's how our class ended up with quite a bit of money. And in the fall, we always got out of school. Of course, the war was on, and they were raising potatoes here, and we got out of school to pick potatoes, and it was always when the World Series were on, because we had these little tiny transistor radios, and they'd be sitting around out in the fields, and we'd listen to the games. Then when, of course, as I said, we went ice skating. Everything, we were always busy. We didn't have to worry about what we were going to do, because there was always plenty to do. You had no idle time. well, Mark came back from the service, and the year after he got back, why, he realized that I had grown up. I wasn't this snot-nosed kid anymore. And then 2 years later, we got married in the Lutheran Church on 3rd Street on July 3rd. So July 3rd of this year, we will celebrate 75 years. And it's been quite an experience. We're both only children, both spoiled only children, so it's been an adventure. We have been so fortunate. Of course, my husband was a hunter. I knew when I married him that I better like the outdoors because that's what we were going to do. And he was a wonderful hunter. And then he even taught me how to hunt, and I like to hunt. That's the one things we've had to give up that's been real hard. I love to elk hunt with about 6 inches of snow. And we have 2 boys. One of them lives in Fairbanks, Alaska, and one of them's living in Baja, California, or Baja, Mexico. And we have, I've got to think how many grandkids we've got. We have 4 grandkids. And as of now, we've got 2, 4, 6 great grandkids. I hope I didn't leave somebody out. It's been an interesting life. One I wouldn't give up for the world.